Amanda Collins, a dedicated patrol officer, mysteriously vanished during a routine night shift in the quiet town of Asheville. Despite relentless searches, no trace of Amanda was ever found, and her case slowly faded into a haunting mystery. But 25 years later, miners exploring an abandoned mine stumbled upon something shocking: Amanda's old police cruiser hidden deep underground. How did her car end up inside a sealed mine untouched for decades? What really happened to Amanda? On that fateful night, the city of Asheville, nestled quietly in the misty embrace of the North Carolina mountains, was one of those small towns where everyone seemed to know each other by name. It was November 14th, 1992, and autumn had already painted the streets in shades of gold and crimson. Amanda, a young patrol officer, embodied the true spirit of dedication. At 27, she had already made an impressive mark in Asheville's police department. Her short, curly chestnut hair framed her expressive green eyes, always bright with determination and kindness. Amanda wore her uniform proudly, despite it sometimes feeling heavier than it should, especially considering the skepticism she frequently faced as one of the few female officers on the force. Yet she always carried herself with dignity and unwavering courage, believing deeply in her ability to make a genuine difference in the community. Amanda's kind-hearted approach had won her the affection of Asheville's residents, especially among the elderly and the youth, who often saw her as a friend rather than just another badge. She knew their names, their stories, their joys, and their struggles, something that endeared her deeply to everyone she encountered. That particular night began routinely enough. Amanda sat comfortably in the driver's seat of her police cruiser, her eyes scanning the familiar streets. Beside her was Officer Daniel Evans, her partner. Daniel was a rookie, barely 23, and still adjusting to the nuances of police work. He was tall and lanky, with short blonde hair, blue eyes, and a permanently curious expression. Amanda appreciated his enthusiasm, though it sometimes bordered on humorous exaggeration. "You know, Amanda," Daniel teased with a playful grin, "I'm convinced the most exciting thing we'll see tonight is old Mrs. Henderson's cat climbing that tree again." Amanda laughed softly, shaking her head. "Be careful what you wish for, Evans. Sometimes peace is the best excitement we can ask for." "Yeah, but I didn't become a cop to rescue cats." Daniel sighed dramatically, leaning back in his seat. Amanda chuckled again, gently reminding him that community policing was more about building trust than chasing excitement. Their banter was comfortably interrupted when the radio crackled with dispatch's voice. It was a simple, routine check. A minor disturbance reported by an elderly resident who thought she'd heard strange noises outside her home near the old Black Hollow mine. Amanda took the call calmly, reassuring Daniel with a friendly smile. "See? Still more exciting than cats," she joked lightly. As Amanda pulled up near the edge of town, she parked the cruiser and stepped out, glancing around the shadowy trees and the silent road stretching toward the abandoned mine, the Black Hollow. Mine had been deserted since the 60s, after a tragic accident had forced its closure. Now it sat forgotten, a gloomy relic hidden by thick woods and whispers of ghost stories told by generations of local kids. "Stay here," Amanda instructed Daniel gently. "I'll just take a quick look around. Probably nothing." Daniel nodded obediently, but couldn't help teasing one last time. "If you need backup against the boogeyman, just scream." Amanda smirked and shook her head as she disappeared into the darkness, flashlight in hand. Daniel watched her figure recede until it melted away in the dark veil of the night, leaning comfortably in his seat, humming softly to himself, expecting her to return shortly. Minutes ticked by, slowly turning into an uncomfortable wait. Daniel checked his watch repeatedly, feeling an inexplicable tightening in his chest. What should have been a routine check had taken far too long. He reached for the radio to call her, but received only static in return. The once comforting silence of the night now felt heavy, oppressive, and unsettling. Growing restless and increasingly worried, Daniel stepped out of the cruiser, flashlight trembling slightly in his hand. The forest around him seemed darker, the trees whispering quietly among themselves as if holding secrets just out of reach. Each step he took along the road toward the mine heightened his anxiety, his heart pounding louder with each passing second. "Amanda?" he called softly. the echo of his voice quickly swallowed by the night. Only silence replied. The beam of his flashlight danced nervously across the ground as he searched, scanning for any sign of his partner. Then suddenly, the beam caught a metallic gleam reflecting dimly from the roadside. Daniel hurried forward, feeling his heart nearly stop. Lying abandoned in the dirt, barely illuminated by his flashlight, was Amanda's police radio. Daniel dropped to one knee, picking it up carefully as he glanced around frantically. "Amanda! Amanda, answer me!" he shouted, desperation edging into his voice. Again, silence enveloped him, a chilling emptiness that filled his heart with dread. He turned his eyes toward the dark outline of the Black Hollow mine entrance, shrouded in shadow and gloom. Something told him the answers lay somewhere in that darkness, but the fear of what he might find, or not find, made his blood run cold. Standing alone under the pale moonlight, Daniel realized with overwhelming dread that something had gone terribly wrong. Amanda Collins, his partner, his mentor, and friend, had vanished without a trace, leaving nothing but silence, darkness, and an abandoned radio as testimony to her disappearance. Daniel stood motionless, the radio clenched tightly in his shaking hand, the dim light casting ominous shadows across his fearful expression. He knew instantly that Asheville's quiet innocence had just been shattered irrevocably. 25 years had quietly slipped by since Amanda Collins had vanished into the darkness without a trace. Asheville, once shaken to its core by her disappearance, had gradually returned to its gentle rhythm. Life went on, memories faded, and the name Amanda Collins became little more than a whisper, an unsolved mystery that haunted those old enough to remember. On a bright morning in July of 2017, the quiet stillness of the past was abruptly disturbed. The Black Hollow mine, shut down since the tragic accident of the 1960s, had recently been reopened by a mining company intent on evaluating its remaining worth. That morning, a group of miners ventured deep into a forgotten shaft, untouched for decades. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the darkness became. Narrow tunnels opened into larger caverns, abandoned rails and rusted mining equipment silent witnesses to a forgotten era. Then suddenly, in the ghostly glow of their headlamps, something unexpected emerged from the shadows. The unmistakable outline of an old police cruiser, frozen in time, covered in decades' worth of dust and rust. The miners stood silently, disbelief washing over them as beams of light danced across the faded blue and white paint, the word police still visible despite years of corrosion. Gathering courage, one miner carefully approached the vehicle, wiping away grime from the cracked windshield. Inside, the seats were empty, yet something drew him toward the trunk. It opened reluctantly, hinges groaning, revealing its hidden contents. Inside lay an old worn uniform neatly folded, a badge dulled by age, and personal belongings carefully placed alongside a sealed envelope. His heart quickened. He had stumbled upon something significant, something that demanded immediate attention. Within hours, news spread rapidly across Asheville, reigniting painful memories that many wished had remained buried. The quiet town found itself thrust back into turmoil, forced to confront the unsolved disappearance of Officer Amanda Collins once more. In his modest house on the outskirts of Asheville, Tom Griffin heard the news through the static of his old transistor radio. At 67, Tom had retired years ago, haunted by cases he'd solved and, more so, by the one he never did. Amanda's disappearance had gnawed at him for years, a constant, unresolved ache that retirement could never ease. Tall and still lean, though weathered by age, Tom carried himself with the quiet dignity of a man burdened by past failures. Amanda's case was his personal ghost, a constant reminder of unanswered questions. Tom knew immediately he'd have no peace until this case was resolved. Picking up the phone, he dialed the familiar number to Asheville's police headquarters, offering his help in a voice roughened by time and regret. At the station, Laura Mitchell had already been assigned to the reopened case. Laura was young, barely 30, but already considered one of the sharpest detectives on the force. Her fiery auburn hair and piercing gray eyes matched her quick wit and relentless determination. But beneath the strong exterior lay hidden insecurities. Laura struggled to prove herself in a department still dominated by men, constantly compared to legends like Amanda Collins. Amanda's shadow loomed large, a pressure she felt daily. When Laura heard Tom Griffin was returning to help, she was hesitant. Tom was an old-school detective, stubbornly analog in a world now reliant on digital methods. She worried he'd slow the investigation down, yet she respected his reputation, knowing his experience was invaluable. Their first meeting was tense yet tinged with humor, an unlikely pair learning to bridge generational gaps. Tom eyed Laura's cluttered desk, stacked high with files and gadgets he couldn't name. He chuckled, shaking his head slowly. You know, detective work used to involve fewer wires and a lot more coffee. Laura smirked, handing him a steaming mug. We've got plenty of coffee, Tom. Just upgraded the technology a bit. Welcome to the future, Tom grumbled good-naturedly, sipping from the cup, feeling immediately at home in her company. Despite initial doubts, they quickly discovered a mutual respect, the spark of camaraderie brightening their shared purpose. Together, Tom and Laura visited the mine, staring in disbelief at the cruiser frozen in time. Tom felt a chill run down his spine. This was Amanda's cruiser, no doubt. The faded number matched exactly, stirring painful memories he'd hoped to forget. Laura noticed his quiet discomfort and gently broke the silence. Did you know her well? Tom nodded slowly. Amanda was special. She deserved better than this. His voice cracked slightly, revealing vulnerability rarely seen. Carefully, they gathered evidence, documenting the scene meticulously. Laura took photos, while Tom carefully removed the items from the trunk, uniform, badge, and the sealed envelope. As he held it, Tom's fingers trembled slightly, sensing the gravity of what might lie inside. Returning to the station, they laid out the artifacts, each item a haunting reminder of Amanda's unfinished story. Tom hesitated over the sealed envelope, weighing heavily in his hand, uncertain if he was prepared to confront the secrets it contained. Laura gently touched his arm. Tom, whatever's in there, we face it together. Taking a deep breath, Tom nodded and carefully broke the brittle seal. The paper crackled with age as he unfolded it, Amanda's handwriting clear and steady, despite the desperate urgency of the words. Laura leaned close, reading silently beside him. The words were simple yet chilling. If you're reading this, I need your help. Someone inside the police department is after me. I don't know who I can trust anymore. Tom's eyes widened, his breath catching sharply as old suspicions surged back. Laura straightened slowly, absorbing the weight of Amanda's final plea. The words hung in the air between them, electrifying the quiet of the room. Tom's voice was barely a whisper, filled with disbelief and guilt. All this time, the threat was from within. Laura stared intently at the letter, determined and resolute. Then it's time we finish what Amanda started. The reopened investigation had suddenly become more complex and more dangerous than either of them had imagined. The past was no longer just a memory. It had returned with a vengeance, demanding justice at last. Years slipped by slowly, quietly eroding hope and embedding grief deeply into the lives left behind in Asheville. Amanda Collins had disappeared into the darkness, and despite desperate attempts, no answers ever came. The unsolved mystery lingered, casting long shadows over the hearts of those who loved her most. Maggie Collins, Amanda's younger sister, lived through each day carrying silent anguish. Initially, she had clung to hope fiercely, convinced her sister would return home safely. But as the years passed and hope faded, she channeled her grief into action, devoting herself wholeheartedly to supporting families facing similar losses. Maggie became a quiet, steady presence at community gatherings and charity events, always offering comfort to others. Her gentle face, now etched softly by sadness and compassion, was familiar to many. Though Maggie never spoke openly of her own pain, people felt her profound empathy. It was her way of healing, a slow, endless process. Arthur Bennett never found peace. A retired investigative journalist, Arthur had known Amanda since she was a child and felt profoundly connected to her case. To him, Amanda was more than a tragic headline. She was family. Arthur had dedicated years meticulously collecting every shred of evidence, newspaper clippings, photographs, eyewitness statements, even obscure rumors. His home became a private museum dedicated to Amanda's unsolved mystery. Although retired, his investigative spirit never rested. Arthur was gripped by an obsession, yet it was one fueled by love, by the unwavering belief that Amanda's story deserved resolution. Paul Henderson, the police chief at the time Amanda vanished, retired carrying a deep, haunting sense of personal failure. Amanda's disappearance had shaken his belief in himself and his profession. Though respected and admired throughout his career, he quietly bore the weight of Amanda's unsolved case, convinced he'd missed something vital, some small clue that might have changed everything. Retirement found Paul living a quieter life in a modest house near the woods, spending his days reading, gardening, and volunteering at the local library, seeking solace in simplicity. But beneath that calm facade, Paul never stopped questioning himself, forever haunted by that November night. Time had changed each of them deeply. Maggie found strength in giving comfort to others. Arthur found purpose in relentless determination. Paul searched for redemption in quiet acts of kindness. Their lives were intricately tied together by a thread of unresolved grief, each dealing with their scars in their own quiet ways. Yet for Asheville, Amanda Collins slowly faded from memory, becoming more myth than reality. Her disappearance was mentioned occasionally by older residents, whispered stories passed down to younger generations, a cautionary tale tinged with sadness. As the years pressed onward, the pain softened somewhat, transforming from sharp agony to a lingering quiet ache. Life went on, but Amanda's absence remained ever present in the lives of those who loved her most, quietly shaping who they had become. Then, on a cool autumn afternoon, exactly 30 years from the day Amanda disappeared, Arthur sat alone in his study, surrounded by the painstakingly curated evidence of decades past. The room felt smaller now, crowded with memories of a life spent chasing ghosts. With a heavy sigh, Arthur reached for an old family album resting quietly on a dusty shelf, its leather binding cracked and faded, leafing gently through yellowed photographs. Arthur's fingers traced moments frozen in time, birthdays, holidays, ordinary days made precious by their simplicity. A faint smile softened his weathered face as memories flooded back. Amanda's bright laughter echoing through summer barbecues, the sparkle in her green eyes unmistakable. He lingered on one photograph, his breath catching unexpectedly. Taken the very afternoon Amanda vanished, it captured the innocence of a carefree moment. Amanda stood smiling warmly beside Maggie, arms draped affectionately around each other. In the background, townspeople gathered near the local park, enjoying the crisp autumn air. But something strange caught Arthur's trained investigative eye, something previously unnoticed. A solitary figure stood in the distant shadows, slightly blurred, yet clearly observing Amanda and Maggie intently. The person's posture appeared rigid, almost predatory, a stark contrast to the casual happiness surrounding them. Arthur's pulse quickened sharply. He leaned closer, scrutinizing the blurred figure, his mind racing through decades of accumulated theories, suspicions, and possibilities. How could he have overlooked this? Could this stranger hold the key to finally understanding Amanda's fate? With trembling hands, Arthur carefully removed the photograph from the album. His investigative instincts surged anew, hope sparking fiercely after years of quiet despair. Amanda's story wasn't finished, not yet. He knew it in his bones. Arthur quickly reached for his phone, fingers shaking slightly with a mixture of anticipation and urgency. He dialed Maggie's familiar number, barely managing to steady his voice as she answered softly. "Maggie," Arthur began quietly, his voice heavy with suppressed emotion. "I think I've found something." A long pause stretched across the line before Maggie replied gently, concern threading through her voice. "Arthur, what is it?" "There's someone in one of the old photos," Arthur explained, his voice gaining strength as he spoke. "Someone we've never noticed before. Someone watching Amanda." Maggie's breath caught sharply, her voice barely a whisper. Do you really think it matters after all this time? Arthur hesitated briefly, then replied firmly, conviction hardening. His tone, yes, it matters now more than ever. This might be our last chance to know the truth, Maggie. On the other end, Maggie fell silent, absorbing the weight of his words. Then softly, with a quiet strength born of years of resilience, she said, "All right, Arthur, I'm listening. What do we do next?" In that moment, Arthur felt a sense of renewed purpose, a surge of hope he hadn't felt in years. Amanda's disappearance had shattered lives and tested their resilience. But now, after so many quiet years, maybe, just maybe, answers still waited to be discovered. The photograph lay quietly on Arthur's desk, the mysterious figure frozen forever in shadow, hinting silently at truths long hidden. Arthur's heart pounded with determination. He would not stop until the shadows revealed their secrets. Amanda deserved justice, and those left behind deserved peace. The quiet, forgotten pain that had lingered for 3 decades was suddenly reignited, blazing fiercely once again. The journey wasn't over yet. In fact, Arthur realized with sudden clarity, it had only just begun. Tom and Laura stood quietly outside Jonathan Mercer's elegant home, an imposing Victorian house nestled among mature oaks and carefully manicured gardens. Mercer had once been the respected chief of Asheville's police department, but now, he was a prominent figure in town, celebrated at charity galas and known for his generous community work. To everyone else, he was above suspicion. To Tom and Laura, he was rapidly becoming the key to unlocking Amanda Collins' decades-old disappearance. Laura took a deep breath, glancing sideways at Tom. "Ready to confront the town hero?" she whispered sarcastically. Tom's eyes twinkled, though his expression was serious. "I've been waiting a long time to ask Mercer a few questions. He never did like me much, so this might actually be fun." She smiled slightly, appreciating his dry humor in such a tense situation. They stepped forward together, knocking firmly on the door. Moments later, it opened to reveal Mercer himself, tall, silver-haired, with piercing blue eyes and an authoritative presence that instantly commanded attention. "Tom Griffin," Mercer said warmly, his voice smooth as silk. "It's been years. And you must be Detective Mitchell. Please come in." Inside, the luxurious living room spoke clearly of Mercer's stature. Plush sofas, antique furniture, and tasteful art adorned the space. Mercer gestured for them to sit, settling across from them with a practiced ease that conveyed total control. "How can I help?" Mercer asked pleasantly, though something subtle flickered behind his eyes, a quiet, careful vigilance. Laura leaned forward slightly. "Mr. Mercer, we've reopened the Amanda Collins case. New evidence has emerged, and we need to revisit what happened that night. We believe you might have information that can help." Mercer's friendly demeanor remained, but Tom saw the subtle shift, his eyes hardening briefly, the casual smile tightening slightly. "Amanda Collins," Mercer repeated carefully, his voice tinged with sorrow. "Terrible tragedy. I'm afraid I already told investigators everything I knew back then. But please, ask your questions." Tom studied Mercer carefully. "Did Amanda ever express concerns about someone within the department?" Mercer laughed softly, shaking his head. "Amanda had her challenges, Tom. You know that better than anyone. It was tough for her as one of the first women in the force. She never came to me personally with accusations, though." Laura narrowed her eyes slightly. "We found a letter from Amanda. She claimed someone within the police was after her. Why wouldn't she have trusted you with that?" Mercer paused, eyes flickering with momentary surprise before recovering smoothly. "Fear can distort reality. Amanda might have felt isolated, misunderstood perhaps. It was a different time." Tom leaned forward calmly but deliberately. "So, you're saying Amanda imagined threats from her own colleagues?" Mercer's voice cooled slightly. "I'm suggesting she was under pressure. Pressure makes people see shadows that aren't there." Laura felt frustration bubbling, but Tom's calm demeanor steadied her. They exchanged a quick glance, silently agreeing they'd gotten all they could for now. Rising, Laura forced a polite smile. "Thank you, Mr. Mercer. We'll be in touch if anything else arises." Mercer rose gracefully, escorting them to the door. As they stepped outside, he smiled pleasantly once more. Be careful out there. Digging into old wounds sometimes wakes things best left sleeping. Tom turned back, matching Mercer's gaze evenly. Truth rarely sleeps peacefully, Jonathan. Walking back to the car, Laura sighed deeply. Did he just threaten us politely, or am I paranoid? Tom grunted dryly. Oh, he threatened us all right. Politeness just makes it creepier. The drive back was quiet, each lost in their own thoughts. At the station, Laura felt the mood had shifted. Colleagues avoided eye contact, whispering ceased abruptly when she entered rooms. She could sense the pressure building. Some officers clearly wanted Amanda's case left buried. Late that evening, Tom and Laura gathered the evidence. They'd painstakingly collected Amanda's uniform, her badge, the mysterious photograph Arthur had uncovered, and Amanda's letter. Laura meticulously documented every item, her mind racing with possibilities. Suddenly, the station lights flickered briefly, plunging them into momentary darkness. When they flickered back on, Laura felt unease grip her heart. Instinctively, her eyes snapped toward the evidence table, empty. Her pulse quickened as she rushed forward. The evidence was gone. Everything they'd found vanished without a trace. Tom, she shouted urgently. Tom appeared beside her, staring grimly at the empty table. Someone's clearly threatened by what we've uncovered. Laura spotted a folded slip of paper tucked beneath the table's edge. She grabbed it quickly, unfolding it with trembling hands. The words were short, cold, and chillingly clear. Drop the investigation, or you'll meet Amanda's fate. A shiver raced down her spine. Tom read the note silently, his jaw tightening with restrained anger. We've clearly rattled someone important, Tom murmured. Mercer's hiding more than we thought. Laura paced nervously. The entire department knows. They're either too afraid or too loyal to someone to help us. Tom gently placed a comforting hand on her shoulder, steadying her nerves. This isn't over yet. Threats mean we're close. We just need to find another way. Laura's voice trembled slightly, betraying deep frustration. How do we fight this? They've erased our evidence, intimidated witnesses. It feels impossible. Tom's calm gaze met hers firmly. Amanda faced this alone years ago. She didn't give up. We won't either. We owe her that. Laura took a slow, calming breath, drawing strength from Tom's unwavering resolve. You're right. Amanda deserves justice. We'll keep digging, no matter what it takes. Outside, night had fallen heavily, clouds obscuring the moon. Asheville lay quietly, unaware of the storm brewing within the shadows. Tom and Laura knew the stakes had risen dangerously, but backing down wasn't an option. They'd come too far. Laura's gaze settled once more on the threatening note, its dark message echoing ominously in her mind. She whispered softly, determination hardening her voice. Whoever did this clearly doesn't know how stubborn I am. Tom managed a slight smile, though worry lingered in his eyes. Then they're about to find out. Silently together, they prepared for a battle neither fully understood, but both were determined to fight. Somewhere beneath Asheville's serene surface lay buried truths darker than they'd imagined. Tom and Laura knew they had to change their tactics. Whoever was behind the sabotage clearly held influence inside the department. Trusting colleagues was now impossible. They needed to act quietly, swiftly, beneath the radar. Late that night, under cover of darkness, they met in Tom's small home on the outskirts of Asheville. The lights were dimmed, curtains drawn. Tom spread out old maps and files across his kitchen table, carefully illuminated by a small lamp. Laura leaned over his shoulder, her expression tense but resolute. Mercer knows we're closing in, Laura whispered, her voice filled with quiet determination. We have to act now, or Amanda's case will be buried again. Tom nodded, slowly, scanning the maps thoughtfully. His finger traced a familiar route, his voice firm. We start where Amanda vanished, Black Hollow Mine. Everything points back there. Laura glanced at him curiously. Why are you so convinced the mine holds our answers? Tom hesitated briefly before speaking softly. Amanda mentioned something to me once. She suspected Mercer and some others were hiding evidence in abandoned sites, somewhere nobody would think to look. The mine's the perfect hiding place. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a soft knock at the door. Both froze momentarily, exchanging worried glances. Tom carefully approached the door, opening it cautiously to reveal an elderly woman wrapped warmly in a thick shawl, her eyes nervous but determined. "My name's Eleanor Martin," she began quietly, her voice frail but clear. "I heard you reopened Amanda's case. There's something I should have told someone long ago." Tom invited Eleanor inside, offering her a seat. She clasped her trembling hands tightly, gathering courage before continuing. "The night Amanda disappeared, I saw Jonathan Mercer. He was driving toward the old mine. It stuck with me because his car's headlights were off, as if he didn't want to be seen." Laura's eyes widened. "Are you certain, Mrs. Martin?" Eleanor nodded firmly. "I've lived here my whole life. I know Jonathan Mercer's face, his car. There's no doubt it was him. I mentioned it to an officer years ago, but he brushed it off like I was confused. But I know what I saw." Tom gently placed a comforting hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "You did the right thing by coming forward now. Thank you." After Eleanor left, Laura exhaled slowly, her voice tense. "This changes everything, Tom. Mercer lied to us. He's definitely involved." Tom's jaw tightened resolutely. "Then we go to the mine and find what Mercer's hiding. But we do it tonight before anyone else interferes." Laura nodded without hesitation. The pair quickly gathered flashlights and equipment, silently preparing themselves for what lay ahead. Moments of quiet reflection passed between them, each knowing the risks but driven by the shared determination to uncover the truth. Driving toward the mine, Laura finally broke the silence softly, her voice edged with quiet vulnerability. "You know, Tom, I keep thinking about Amanda. She was alone, trying to fight all this. She must have been terrified." Tom's voice was gentle yet firm. "Amanda was brave. She knew the risks, but she always did the right thing, no matter how dangerous. She'd be proud of you, Laura." Laura smiled faintly, comforted by Tom's sincere words. They continued onward, united by mutual respect and a growing bond forged in the fire of the investigation. Arriving near the mine, they parked carefully, moving quietly on foot through shadows toward the abandoned entrance. They slipped inside, unnoticed, guided only by narrow beams of their flashlights piercing the oppressive darkness. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with decades of silence. Every footstep echoed softly against the walls, amplifying their presence. Carefully, they followed Tom's map, navigating deeper through winding tunnels. Old rails, rusted tools, and broken timbers littered their path, remnants of forgotten labor and loss. Suddenly, Laura paused, shining her light toward a section of wall marked suspiciously by newer bricks hastily arranged decades ago. She exchanged a silent glance with Tom, whose eyes narrowed with understanding. "Someone sealed this section intentionally," Laura whispered. "Help me move these." Together they carefully shifted bricks aside. Suddenly the fragile wall partially collapsed, releasing a thick cloud of dust. As it settled, they froze, staring in shock. Before them was a hidden tunnel stretching into deeper darkness. Laura's flashlight caught something partially hidden by debris near the tunnel entrance. She knelt, carefully uncovering a dusty object, her heart racing sharply. It was a woman's shoe, dirty and weathered by time, yet unmistakably familiar. Tom's breath caught sharply, recognition dawning instantly. "That's Amanda's shoe." Laura felt emotion tightening her chest, sorrow mixing with renewed determination. "She was here, Tom. This must be where it happened." Tom nodded grimly, his voice heavy with emotion. "Whatever happened, it's at the end of that tunnel." Silently, they stepped into the hidden passageway, moving cautiously forward. Shadows danced ominously along stone walls, whispering secrets that had remained buried far too long. As they progressed, Laura's mind drifted into vivid flashbacks, imagining Amanda's final hours, driven by her discovery of Mercer's corruption. Years ago, Amanda had stumbled onto disturbing evidence, financial records and letters implicating Mercer and other senior officers in a massive cover-up involving bribery, illegal activities, and stolen evidence. Horrified, she'd attempted to expose them quietly, but Mercer discovered her intentions and began intimidating her subtly, isolating her from allies, forcing Amanda into a desperate struggle to protect herself. On that final night, Mercer had confronted her, chasing Amanda into the darkness toward Black Hollow Mine. Amanda had tried desperately to hide crucial evidence in the old tunnels, hoping someone trustworthy would eventually find it. But Mercer had cornered her, leaving Amanda trapped and alone in the very place Tom and Laura now explored. Laura's heartbeat quickened, understanding Amanda's fear and bravery more profoundly. Tears stung her eyes briefly, empathy fueling her determination even further. Tom seemed to sense her thoughts, reaching gently for Laura's shoulder, offering silent comfort and strength. They moved deeper into the tunnel until they reached another concealed chamber. Inside, piles of old files, dusty boxes, and rusted police badges lay scattered chaotically. Tom's flashlight illuminated clear evidence, records confirming Amanda's accusations, proof of Mercer's crimes carefully hidden from prying eyes. Laura's voice shook slightly, anger mixing with relief. Amanda found it all. She was right, Tom. But their relief was short-lived. Footsteps echoed suddenly from behind, someone approaching quickly. Tom and Laura extinguished their lights instantly, pressing tightly against the shadows, breath held anxiously. A voice broke the tense silence, a cold, familiar voice. "I warned you both to stop, you just wouldn't listen." It was Mercer. Laura's pulse raced wildly, adrenaline surging through her veins. Mercer was close. Dangerously close. They had stumbled onto the truth, and Mercer would stop at nothing to bury it forever. Tom and Laura pressed themselves tightly into the shadows, hearts pounding loudly in the silence. Jonathan Mercer's footsteps echoed ominously through the hidden chamber, each heavy step a chilling reminder of the danger they now faced. Mercer's voice cut sharply through the darkness. "I know you're in here, Tom. Laura, you shouldn't have come this far." Laura tightened her grip on Tom's arm, signaling silently. Tom's jaw clenched tightly as anger rose in him, decades of frustration, guilt, and pain crystallizing into a single determined resolve. Slowly, carefully, they moved toward the tunnel's entrance, hoping to evade Mercer's watchful gaze. But suddenly, Mercer's flashlight beam caught them both, illuminating their startled faces clearly. His expression, hardened by anger and fear, confirmed their worst suspicions. "You just couldn't let it rest," Mercer snarled bitterly, stepping closer. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Tom's voice trembled with barely controlled rage. "We know exactly what you've done, Mercer. You killed Amanda. You covered it up for years. It's over." Mercer hesitated briefly, his eyes narrowing sharply. "I never meant to hurt her," he admitted bitterly, his voice shaking with surprising vulnerability. "Amanda wouldn't let it go. She threatened to expose everything. The corruption, the bribes. It was supposed to protect us. Protect this town." Laura stepped forward defiantly. "Protect? You destroyed lives. Amanda's life. Maggie's life. You betrayed everyone who trusted you." Mercer's hand trembled slightly, clearly conflicted. "I told her to back off. That night I confronted Amanda outside the mine. She tried to run. I chased her down here. It was dark. I grabbed her, tried to stop her. She fought back. We struggled. Then she slipped. I heard her scream. When I looked down that pit, it was too late. She was gone." Tom's voice broke with emotion, grief and anger overwhelming him. "And instead of helping her, you covered your tracks, hid the car, buried the truth. How could you live with yourself?" Mercer's eyes darkened further, regret mixing with stubborn defiance. "I've spent every day of my life regretting that night. But I did what I had to. I wasn't going to ruin everything over one mistake." Laura shook her head fiercely. "That mistake was a life. Amanda's life. Now it's your turn to face justice." Mercer's face hardened suddenly, desperation flashing dangerously in his eyes. I can't let you do that." Without warning, Mercer lunged toward Laura, attempting to seize her flashlight. Tom reacted swiftly, colliding with Mercer, grappling desperately. Mercer fought viciously, determined to escape at any cost. Their struggle sent echoes of violence bouncing off the cavern walls, shadows twisting grotesquely around them. Laura watched anxiously, searching quickly for anything to help. Spotting a loose timber, she grabbed it tightly, raising it just as Mercer gained advantage over Tom. With all her strength, she struck Mercer squarely across the shoulders, knocking him off balance. He stumbled forward, falling heavily against the cavern wall, stunned. Breathing heavily, Tom restrained Mercer securely, eyes filled with relief and triumph. The fight was over. Days later, Asheville's police force, driven now by fresh determination, descended upon Black Hollow Mine, initiating an intensive search. After painstaking hours, Amanda's remains were finally discovered at the bottom of the hidden pit, a silent testament to a tragic end. Her badge lay beside her, rusted but unmistakably hers, forever symbolizing her courage and sacrifice. Amanda's funeral brought Asheville together like never before. Citizens young and old lined the streets respectfully, paying tribute to the woman whose bravery had exposed corruption and whose tragic story now inspired justice. Maggie stood, quietly, tears flowing freely as she finally found peace, comforted gently by Tom and Laura standing beside her. Days afterward, Tom stood alone before Amanda's gravestone, the quiet cemetery air filled with whispers of gentle autumn leaves. "We finally found you, Amanda," he whispered softly, voice heavy with emotion. "I'm sorry it took so long." Laura approached silently, resting a comforting hand gently on Tom's shoulder. "She'd be proud, Tom. Proud of you. Proud we didn't give up." Tom nodded quietly, gratitude and peace filling him. "We did this together. Amanda's finally at rest, and that matters more than anything." Months later, Asheville dedicated a memorial in Amanda's honor, her bravery immortalized, her sacrifice remembered forever. Tom and Laura stood side by side before the polished stone monument engraved with Amanda's name, feeling deep relief and pride at having brought long overdue justice. Laura turned slightly toward Tom, her voice gentle yet playful. "So, is this how retirement feels, Tom? Peaceful?" Tom chuckled softly. "Retirement? You young detectives never give up, do you? But it does feel peaceful, for now." As they stood quietly together, Laura's phone vibrated suddenly, startling them both from the quiet reflection. Answering swiftly, her expression shifted quickly from relaxed to deeply serious. "Detective Mitchell," she said firmly. Listening carefully, her face became increasingly focused, brows furrowing thoughtfully. "Yes, I understand. We'll be there immediately." Hanging up, Laura turned toward Tom, eyes shining with quiet excitement, anticipation, and determination. "Tom, looks like retirement will have to wait. We've got another case, a big one." Tom smiled knowingly, determination rekindled within his eyes. "Then I guess our work isn't quite finished yet." Together, Tom and Laura left Amanda's memorial behind, stepping boldly into the next chapter of their journey. Amanda's legacy now lived through them, through their courage, their persistence, and their unwavering commitment to truth and justice. They would face whatever challenges awaited, ready to defend those who couldn't defend themselves, honoring Amanda's memory in every step they took forward. Asheville's mysteries were far from over, but in their hearts, Tom and Laura knew they were ready to confront whatever darkness awaited, guided always by Amanda's courage, her spirit forever inspiring them to never, ever give up.